Hello everyone, welcome to William in the Magic Box. Today on our show, we are going to have Ty. Ty is from Wyoming, but he lives in Mississippi in the USA. So let's see what Ty has to say. Enjoy the interview. So hello Ty, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Very well, thanks so much for taking the time today for the interview. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
So tell me, how's your day going so far?
It's going well. I am a professor of education, and so I still am working during the summer, teaching a summer course, doing research things. And so I've been working all morning, and then I have meetings and this. And besides that, I just get to hang out with my dog, and I'm gonna take him to the dog park here pretty soon. So it's a regular chill day for me.
Wow, so tell me a little bit more about your career as a professor, how everything started.
Yeah, so I always have a very similar story to how everything started because it really sort of all connects together. I grew up in a very small town in Wyoming called Shoshone, Wyoming. At the time, it was a little over 600 people. Now it's a little under 500 people. So very small town in a very low populated state. But I was from a really great working class family. I have a twin brother named Chase. I had my mom and my stepdad. We all grew up together on a ranch where we raised cattle. And so I came from this rural working class background, and I was thankful because a lot of rural working class students don't make it to college or don't make it through college. But I ended up at the University of Wyoming because of a college access program, because of good scholarships. And so it was there that I was trying to figure out how to transition into a large university, into a new space with lots of different unfamiliar faces, much bigger than the rural hometown that I'd been a part of, with lots of different like norms and processes than my working class background. And so I actually almost went on academic probation and almost transferred out my first year at the University of Wyoming. But I was thankful because family and friends and faculty and staff at the university all sort of supported me and guided me in keeping in college there. And that's what sort of inspired me to say, okay, I want to actually work in higher education to support students like me who come from these minoritized and marginalized backgrounds, who have a
Wow.
hard time maybe adjusting to college and how I can better support them, to and through college. And so decided that I wanted to go and study what we call higher education and student affairs. And so I
Mhm.
went to the University of Connecticut, Yukon, in Connecticut, and I did that for my master's degree. But I had this amazing professor, Milagros Castillo Montoya, and I always name her because she really changed the trajectory of my life. And I went to talk to her about what to do after graduation, and she asked me why I wasn't pursuing a doctorate, and did I know I could study higher education, and what would be my research interests. And so I talked to her about how I hadn't really seen a lot of research about rural working class students like me.
Wow.
And she was like, that could be your research interests. And so I applied to doctoral programs and ended up at the Graduate School of Education, which we call Teachers College at Columbia University in New York City. And for the past several years there, I studied how sort of rurality, this idea of being rural, intersects with higher education, and thinking about what it's like for rural working class students to be in higher education and how we can support them. I also identify as gay, and I had a really rough time with that in my small town, in a conservative family, in a conservative state. And so I sort of have this burgeoning research area where I'm thinking about rural queer students in education and in college. But a lot of my research is this thinking about these rural students with various intersecting or interacting identities and how do we support them in gaining a college degree. So I am in my second year of being a professor here at the University of Mississippi. Some people call it Ole Miss. And I've really been able to just sort of like go into those research interests and figure out how like I said, keep supporting rural students who are working class, rural students who are queer, and how we can help them to educational attainment.
Oh my God, I love your story, Ty. I really
Like,
love it. It's very inspiring. My goodness. I
Yeah.
love the way, somehow you come from a very small town, the farm. You're in the farm, like growing up, and as you said, it's difficult. A lot of people they don't make far too far because the way they've been raised, the way the reality is there. You know what I mean? It's not. Some people they think that it's not wrong with that. You know what I mean? Some people they fit well. However, there is a big world out there.
Yeah.
That we can explore as well. And seeing someone so talking so open about it as well, I have no idea how inspiration it is. I come from a very small town as well, growing up.
Oh,
And
nice. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. Back in Brazil, I remember growing up. I never had so much like. For me, was the life I was presented, and I was happy. But when you start growing up, you understand that there are a big world out there, opportunities, and if your personality fits you the way they want to explore more and be adventurous, why not? And I think that's gay guys, the queer community, we have this tendency of somehow going after our dreams and try to prove the world that we can do something about it and be happy and still be ourselves. So thanks so much for sharing. It's very inspiring. I'm so glad that you shared that in the
Of
beginning of the
course.
interview.
Thanks for
Amazing.
asking me. And I always talk about the idea that, um, uh, you know, it's a lot of systemic barriers that have been waged against rural areas. And so that creates these low college going rates for rural populations. Um, and some folks may not want to go to college. Some folks may want to choose the military. Some folks may want to go to a community college. For your university, there's a variety of options. But my thing is always, as long as everyone has access to all those choices, that's what's really important to me. And as far as being queer and rural, I do think you're right because that's a lot of my research is talking about we go to college, we're in these new spaces that are so diverse and different than what we're used to. We're maybe able to be ourselves a little bit more, but then you're still that sort of small town kid and you might get judged for that, judged from being from a rural area, small town. And so you have this sort of constant feeling of like, am I an insider? Am I an outsider? And how do I balance that? So you're hitting the nail right on the head with everything that you said. And it's a lot of what I found in my research as well about rural working class folks and rural queer folks.
Absolutely. I've got goosebumps now. And actually,
Yeah.
I made a note here, like your favorite queer farm boy professor that you say Instagram. I was like, I need to ask him about that.
Yes, absolutely. I always put that in my social media. I want people to know that they can talk to me about being queer, especially folks who may not feel safe to do so. And a lot of folks have reached out, and I feel honored and, like you said, inspired by them. And so it has been a really cool way to sort of like mi mix my identities of being that farm ranch boy and being a queer person who struggled a lot, but has come very far in my queer identity.
Amazing. So tell me, so now, right now, you're based in Mississippi right now.
Yes, I am. Yeah, in Oxford, Mississippi. That's where Ole Miss is at.
I see. So tell me something interesting about the city, about the place where you're based right now.
Yeah, so people have all these sort of preconceptions or misconceptions about Mississippi, and of course, rightfully so. There has been a lot of troublesome and systematically racist and oppressive historical aspects of Mississippi, but it's still a place where, thousands upon thousands of people make their lives. And so
Mhm.
it's been interesting for me as someone who's never lived in the South to be down here and learn about how people do make and live their lives here in the South. And I think that is really important. And I want to say that's in a really positive way that I'm mentioning that. And so Oxford, Mississippi, it's actually named after Oxford, like in England, because when the university was founded, the idea was like we want to create, a really great university here in the South. And so that's why it's called Oxford. It has a really cool outdoor scene with lots of parks and walkways along trails, and it's got this sort of like nature all around it, even though it's a bigger college town. The one of the most interesting parts about it, though, is that it has this town square, which I don't know if you've ever seen the show Gilmore Girls. There's this show called Gilmore Girls where they talk about sort of the town square and everything sort of revolves around that. But that really is sort of like how it operates here. And so I always say it's like the Southern Gilmore Girls or Stars Hollow, which their town is named. And so it has this beautiful town square with a giant courthouse in the middle, and then around it are like shops and restaurants and like bookstores and everything. And so that's like one of my favorite places to go is down on the square because it's just always bustling and lots of cool like local things down there. And one of the best parts about Oxford is that it's considered a very literary town. And so
Hmm.
William Faulkner, who is like one of the most famous authors in Western and US literature, at least, he actually had his house here and lived here for many, many years. And his house still stands here, and you can go visit it and walk along a trail by his house. And
Wow.
John Grisham was an author who lived here as well. And so there was all of these sort of like authors and people who would visit down here. And so it became a space where you really could come down and write and like be in nature and think these ideas. And so it has spurred um, having these local bookshops. And so there are this, let's see, four of them called Square Books. And so they're all down on that town square. And they have main square books, and then they have rare books, and then they have kids books, and then they have off square books, which is sort of like a quirky, interesting bookshop. And Square Books is like my favorite place in town. And so it's this old bookstore with an upstairs and a downstairs, and you can just smell it. And it's like this, you go in, you can smell the books, and I love it. And they have famous authors coming through there all the time to talk about their books, and celebrities who come to do panels and talks,
Wow.
people who just stop in from all over to go Square Books. And so it's this really cool place. And one of my favorite things to do is it has like a balcony that overlooks the town square. And so it's kind of like New Orleans where you can sit out and look at the streets. And
Wow.
I just, buy a book and I go read out there. So yeah, Oxford is an interesting place. Obviously, lots of history, but it really is a cool place if folks want to ever check it out. Absolutely.
Amazing. And how far are you from Jackson, the capital of Mississippi?
2.5 hours to Jackson. We're actually closer to Memphis. We're about an hour and 20 minutes from Memphis. So we're all the way up the northern part of Mississippi.
I see. Okay,
Yeah,
so during the interview, I'm going to explore a little bit more about your life and also about your journey so far, okay?
of course. Yeah. Thanks for asking.
Ty, are you ready to go on a beautiful journey through your memories in life and share your point of views?
Yes, let's do it.
Amazing. Welcome to William and the Magic Box. Be my best friend. Random fun questions, okay? I'm just gonna play a song now just for us to relax before the first question, all right?
All right. All right.
Let's do it. Right, before we start the game, during the journey, if it comes up a question that you don't want to talk about, some reason you don't want to answer, always can change, okay?
Sounds good.
First question for you is, what would your ideal life look like?
Ooh, so I actually just traveled to Sitges in Spain. I love a small, quaint beach town with cool stores and like areas to like go off and eat food, and then you can be by the beach and see like the cascading waves. Like that's just my favorite thing. And so if I could read books and watch television and movies and just be by the beach all the time, that would be like my ideal life, and that would be the most relaxing, best place that I could ever be at.
Wow. Is your first time in Spain?
Yes, it was. I went to Madrid, Barcelona, Valencia, and Sitges, and I went to my first gay wedding. My friends got married in Valencia,
Oh
and
my
so
God.
it was a very interesting and cool trip because there was a lot of stuff going on, and I saw a lot of different facets of Spain, and also, personally got to see amazing friends get married.
Wow. So besides the, of course, the marriage that was very special, what was the highlight of your visit to Spain besides the wedding?
Going to Sitges. Have you been to Sitges before?
Actually, I haven't, and I was talking today with a friend who was there just last week as well. Maybe you crossed there, maybe, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was Pride this week or last week.
Yes,
And
she
so it was
said
like
that.
I just left right before Pride happened. So uh
Oh,
yeah, so you climb up, hills, not like mountains, but hills next to
yeah,
the beach.
yeah.
And you oversee just these gorgeous like cliffs and the waves coming in, and then there's always like like a restaurant, like a local beach restaurant on all the different beaches. And there's just something so peaceful and tranquil about seeing the ocean and the cliffs and everything sort of cascading together. I loved it. And if you actually go, it's kind of a far walk. It's like 30 to 40 minutes away from like the main town.
Yeah.
There's what they claim to be the world's oldest like gay nude beach. And so you do
Hmm.
not have to be nude. You can be nude if you want to, but I did not go nude. It's just whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
But it's this space where you're sort of in this enclave of just queer people, and the waves are here. The water is gorgeous and blue. There's a little like small like place that you can buy snacks and tables that you can sit at, and everyone's like reading and talking and drinking. And so it's just this really cool, calm but like fun energy, and that was definitely my favorite part of Spain.
How did you find the Spanish guys?
What was, oh, I mean, beautiful, obviously. Just like otherworldly of how beautiful they are. And also very, very friendly and caring. It was a place where I never felt like I was unwelcome. It was a really cool place to be a part of. And the men really were friendly, like in bars and restaurants or wherever you were going. So I enjoyed that.
Yeah, cities here in Europe is one of the gay spots, gay place to go. It's like Gran
Yeah.
Canaria as well in Spain. I don't know if you heard about Gran Canaria. It's an
Yeah,
island.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's an island there. I've been a few times. When people they go to Barcelona and they tend to go to cities because it's the gay scene there is quite big. And yes, I had so many people on the show. Actually, fun enough, I've been to Spain, but I've never been to Barcelona before. But I have so many guests on the show. I need to go there for sure now.
Absolutely. And once you get to Barcelona, Sitges is very
Yeah,
close.
very close.
And yeah, you can just pop over there. I actually think I ended up spending almost a week in Sitges. So, I
Wow.
mean, I just loved every day waking up to the ocean and going around to the different shops and restaurants. And that, one day I just sat by myself at like a little French cafe,
Nice,
and
amazing.
it's amazing there.
Yeah.
And it's a place where you feel like you can sort of step away from the rat race of the US a little bit, at
Uh-huh.
least like a lot of urban and suburban areas where there's lots of commerce and business happening, and you just get to kind of relax and enjoy yourself. And I finished a full book there in Sitges because it was just a time where I got to chill out. So,
Okay, next question. Hey Kai, next question for you is, what is something that not many people know about you?
ooh, that's a stumper. I actually very much wear my heart on my sleeve, so I don't have a lot of things that are secret. Uh,
Or maybe something that, sometimes we have our routine that nobody knows, something that you do every day, the things.
yes, I have a very boring routine, and this actually relates to something that I am open about. I have pretty severe mental health issues. I'm thankful that between medication and therapy, I have them under control, but they were really hard growing up all the way till I was about 30.
Wow.
I have obsessive compulsive disorder, and it really manifested in severe routines that I had to do, or otherwise I thought world consequences would happen, or consequences in my life. And so this is a very interesting thing, but I have brushed my teeth in the same way, in the same routine, since I was in high school. And so that's like, I mean, 2004 to now, it's like 20 years. Uh, and it started out as a OCD routine, but I've got the routines under control. But I was like, this is one thing that I feel like actually is very helpful. And every time I go to the dentist, they talk about how clean my teeth are. And so that's one thing that I have kept for 20 years, is I literally have the exact same routine of how I cover my entire mouth with brushing my teeth. So that's not that exciting, but it's something that people would not know about me.
There we go. The whole world is knowing right now.
Exactly. And I like to normalize talking about OCD, and that people can get on medication and go to therapy. And I swear, it's not going to work the same for everybody, but it can help. And so if people are ever struggling with that, like, please do it. It took me 30 years to do it, and I feel
Wow.
so much better being, you know,
Free.
support. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Next question. Let's do it. Right. So before the next question, as you mentioned about growing up in a farm with, not many opportunities around, and being gay, queer as well. So tell me, when you think about what was the most challenging for you growing up in this environment, and what was the most enjoyable part when you look back?
Ooh, that's a good question. The most challenging part was being like deeply in the closet. I talk about this in some of my research publications and some of my like blogs and op-eds. Um, I was, I think, 8 going on 9 when Matthew Shepard was murdered in Laramie, Wyoming for being queer. Uh, and so it was in my home state. It was a gay man. It was a very brutal murder. And it was just as a kid that sort of viscerally imprints on you of thinking that you could be the next person to have that happen to you if anybody finds out that you're gay. And so it really was just so terrifying to me to think about anybody, friends, family, whatever it is, finding out that I was gay. The one thing that actually sounds like it's not enjoyable, but it really was there was the movie Brokeback Mountain that came out when I was in high school. I think I was a junior in high school. And where Ennis is from is actually where we would go to the Walmart. It's literally Riverton, Wyoming, like where we would go to the Walmart. And so they were located within like the county and place that I was from. And it was the first time where I ever got to see queer love in a context that I understood it and I felt it. And it like hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like emotional for like 3 days and I couldn't talk to anybody about it. And so that movie actually prompted me to come out to my first person ever. And she was my friend Amber in high school. And I told her about being gay, and she was so loving and supportive. And so, even though that sounds like it was a really traumatizing experience for me, it was the first time where I viscerally felt like what it could be like to experience queer love, and that I needed to live like my authentic self. And so I just really appreciate her, and then a couple other women that I came out to in high school that supported me because they kept it a secret, and it was people I could talk to about who I was for the first time in my life. And so, it all kind of comes together of you're from
Absolutely.
this space. It hurts you so bad to be here because you can't be yourself. But then I saw that movie and I was like, okay, you can be yourself. And how does this sort of like come, into your head all together? So yeah, it was interesting.
Wow. And the most enjoyable part for you, growing up in a farm, surrounded by nature, by people, what was the most enjoyable for you?
Oh yeah, definitely. Um, I would instantly say my friends and family, especially the friends that I made in high school. So my brother and I moved schools when my mom married my stepdad. We were 13 years old. We moved schools to a whole new town and county, and so we were a little. It was a tough transition in 8th grade, but then once we hit high school, we had these friends that we made in 8th grade. We made more friends in high school, and they became some of my best friends. We still talk to this day. I still hang out with them when I go home to visit. It's like the things, I don't know, just like these random things. Like we would get up and there was a local donut shop in Riverton, Wyoming, where Ennis in the movie is from. And it was called Daylight Donuts. And we would wake up at like 4 a.m. and we would drive around the country to everybody's house in this friend group, and then we would all go to the donut shop and get donuts and make it to school, by 7:38, whatever time school started. And these
Wow.
were the things where it's just like it was so fun, and you just loved and cared for one another, and that still carried on to this day. And so my friends, it's just so amazing. The other piece is like being in the country. There's no other way to describe it. Some people who are from urban areas or suburban areas, they have talked how it's sort of eerie for them to be in the silence or be in such large open spaces. Totally validate that. But for me, it's like going home, like seeing the sunset, like seeing huge mountain peaks in the background, like going and, seeing cows and horses, and like no matter how far away I go, I always feel some sort of sense of home going to those types of places. And it was I mean, looking back, it's just really fortunate that I got to grow up there. All those other things were going on, but I still got to be in a really pretty, beautiful open space.
Amazing. Okay. Next question for you is, if you had only 24 hours of life, what would you do?
Gonna make me cry, maybe.
Oh. Mhm.
I would, okay. I would cash out my 401k and my like other savings and give them to my family so that my mom could pay off her student loans that she had to take out when she was a single mom, and that I could just make sure that my brother and sister-in-law and my little nephews like are taken care of. Um, I would want to make sure that they like live a happy, healthy life and that my mom doesn't have to worry about that anymore. Um, I would want to be around my friends and family. So I would have some sort of party where we could all hang out with one another and listen to like 90s and 2000s music and like eat ice cream and like pizza and whatever and just hang out. And then I really would like fly to the beach and like read a book that I really cared about and sit on the beach and just like soak it all in. And I think that would be like the 24 hours for me. You made
Oh
me
my God.
cry. I
That's
always
so
cry in interviews.
beautiful. Oh, that's so beautiful, Ty. I think
Thank you.
your biggest heart, the big heart you have. It's I'm sure your family and your friends they watch this interview right now. I'm sure they appreciate your heart, your words because I think in the end of the day, people, friends, family they matter a lot. And in these
Exactly.
circumstances, when we are having in a place where we know we are not well or something's gonna happen, not we they come to us somehow, their thoughts, and and they are part of our lives. So amazing, beautiful.
Absolutely. Thank
Very
you
sweet,
so much. I appreciate that. And
very
I'm
sweet.
grateful that my twin brother is an amazing queer ally. Like my mom and I have always been so close. Like I'm just grateful. And all my friends, like I couldn't have made it through things without him. So I really do want to make sure that they all feel supported and good and everything else.
I can see all of them smiling right now with this interview.
I hope so.
Next question. Next question for you is, what's the best compliment have you ever received?
Uh, I've, and I don't say this in a boastful way, but I've gotten the compliment more than once, and especially from students, that I make spaces that they feel included and safe in. And it's not to say that you're going to make that for every single person. Like, not every person might feel that way. But if I can make at least one person feel like they can be themselves and feel safe and included and just good being in a space that I've created, like that is the best compliment. And whenever a student says that on my evaluations or, on a thank you card or anything like that afterwards, after they've graduated, after my class, like whatever it is, that is the best compliment because I had lots of people that made me feel included, but I also had spaces where I was very scared to be myself. And I just want folks to be able to be themselves and feel respected and heard and understood. And that's like the biggest compliment I can get.
And saying that, when you think about yourself, when you analyze yourself, what's the biggest joy of being Thai? What do you like the most about being you?
Ooh, that's a good one. I feel like we always concentrate on what's the hardest part of being you. Um, I find joy in nostalgia.
Hmm.
Um, like I mentioned, like going into a bookstore, so good. It reminds me, and I was just talking to my mom and brother about this week. We were from a very small town even before the one we moved to where my stepdad's ranch was at. It's called Pine Bluffs, Wyoming, and it's like an hour from the capital, Cheyenne, Wyoming. And of course, Cheyenne had all the things because they're like an urban place.
Yeah.
And so they had the bookstore Barnes and Noble, and we would go as a family and get bagel makers. It's like a bagel shop chain. And then we would go to the bookstore, Barnes and Noble, and I can just remember the smell of those books and the feeling of like I just loved reading so much. And then we would go to this restaurant, CB Potts, another chain. You think you're so fancy when you're a kid, but most of them are just chain restaurants. And we would eat food and play pool. And I just remember like those feelings it's so nice for me because every time I walk into Square Books, I feel that feeling, or every time I go into a Barnes and Noble to buy like a book for my nephew, I feel that feeling. And so that nostalgia is really nice. And the other piece that comes out with that, I love like 90s and 2000s sitcoms. Like
Mhm.
obviously, there are things that um, are problematic, could be changed. We
Yeah.
at the time people were not thinking about it enough or talking about it enough, but there's at least this sort of idea that things in life are hard, but they can like be solved. And in a short amount of time where you get some laughs along the way. And so even right now, like I'm rewatching this 90s sitcom from my childhood, Just Shoot Me. And I'm like laughing so hard and remembering these episodes and when I'm a kid. And there's something about me and this feeling of nostalgia where if I can find those things, I immediately go into the feelings and it makes me feel better. And so that is really nice.
Those nostalgia feelings are the best, aren't they? Oh my God. When a music, a show, or a
Yes,
program, or anything that brings you to that moment in your life is just the best feeling. And
exactly.
it just feel alive. Just feel like, my God, that's part of me. It's part of my life. It's part of my,
Mhm.
my path, my journey.
Yep, exactly. And I don't know if you know the country artist Garth Brooks. He's from like way big in the 90s. One of the biggest like sellers in the US of all time. But anyways, he I've been waiting to go see him in concert since I was a little kid. And I
Wow.
finally got to go to Vegas and see him in like a small theater last December. And it's like, oh my gosh, all the feelings come rushing back singing
Yeah.
this with my mom and brother in the car. And yeah, it's just so good. And it's
Wow.
nice that we can sort of live, you know, we don't want to live in the nostalgia forever, but you can at least sort of find comfort and solace in that.
Absolutely. It's a safe place to be. Always going to be there.
Exactly.
That's how it's.
Yes.
Ready for another question?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Next one. Hey, Ty, next question is, what do you think people need to know about each other before they start a relationship?
That's a good question. I was actually in a very long-term relationship and we're not in that relationship anymore. So I'm trying to glean some sort of like reflections on that. Um, I think make sure that you're on the same page with
Mhm.
your like interests and values. It's not that someone has bad values or bad interests, but you sometimes just have completely different values and interests.
Yeah,
And like I said, neither are good, neither are bad. They're just different. And
absolutely.
over time, those can become really grating to try to like constantly mesh them together, especially when they don't really mesh together. And so I think people in like the day of like dating apps and how you present yourself and like all these things, we like to present ourselves in a certain way. And I'm like, no, you should like let them know up front these things about yourself, and they should let them, you know, about things about themselves, because over time, those things are just going to become bigger and bigger issues. So I think if you can be open and honest about that up front, I think that would be really helpful, you know, before you start into a relationship, move in together, all those sorts of things.
How is being gay in Oxford, in Mississippi? Do you feel like you can be your truly self? You can express the way you are, or sometimes can be a bit tricky?
It is a bit tricky. I always say that Mississippi is uh, not as queer as you want, but queerer than you think. And so we have like a monthly dance party here in Oxford called Code Pink. That's like a queer dance party. We have monthly socials with this group called Out and About in Oxford. Um, I have my roommate and like bestie here is gay. We're professors together at Ole Miss. Like there are places where you can be yourself and sort of plug into like these queer social, you know, communities. Uh, there's also this town close by called Water Valley, and somehow like queers opened up businesses there, and there's like a queer feminist bookstore there, and then all the like a bunch of queer folks started moving there, and now it's like this interesting 2000 person that's like a queer enclave. And so you
Wow.
sort of like you realize that there are these places you can plug into and find, but at the same time you have to realize that you're in deeply red state, politics wise, and that there are times when you're out on the square and you're around some drunk like bros that you just don't know if you're safe, and so you sort of have to like, you know, keep that in mind and keep yourself safe. And so it really is tricky, but I always say that you will find a lot of places around that, around the US that are like that. That is not only the South, but it's just something that you have to be aware of wherever you're moving to, where you can sort of like be yourself and where you might have to do some code switching or protecting yourself a little bit. Absolutely.
I see. All right.
Yeah.
3 questions left. Let's do it.
All right. Sounds good.
Before the next question, I'm going to ask a question in 2 parts. Yeah. The first part of the question is, tell me the very first time that you walked in a class to teach a class as a professor. Tell me the feelings, tell me the experience. How did you feel about it? How was the expectation? And the second part of the question is, what's the biggest joy of being a professor? What do you like the most about it?
Yeah. So what's interesting is the first time I got to teach a class in my field, I was actually a TA, a teaching assistant.
Okay.
Uh, and I remember being so nervous. Um, I was like, are they going to understand what I'm trying to convey? Like, are these conversations going to go off the rails? Like, I have no idea what's going to happen. And so I was teaching a class in the middle of New York City about rural, post-secondary education staff and faculty. And the number one, the students were so great about being open and discussing things and like being willing to discuss with everybody that like I can't thank them enough for being open to do that. There was even a student who had never talked to the entire class and he talked that day, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, that's like the biggest compliment. Like I'm glad you feel safe enough to do that or open enough to do that, whatever it is." And so that was really nice. Um the other thing that I thought was like the most powerful was the many of the students were from urban areas, and they actually started saying, wow, when I learn about rural America, there's actually a lot more in common than people make it seem like. And I've been saying that for forever. Like, you know, if we would all sort of come together and talk about the commonalities that we face, the common barriers, the common strengths that we have, it's not to say that everything would be rah rah rah, but we would at least be able to like talk with one another and be more empathic and open with one another. And so that was something that they said on their own. And I was just so happy that they sort of made that recognition on their own, of something that I've been thinking about for a really long time. So that was really
Wow.
nice. And it really ties into the best part of being a professor. I always say I love my research. I love looking at rural issues in higher education. I'm so passionate about it. But when you get into a class where students, like I said, feel safe, feel included, talk about how they loved your class, how they want you as a professor again, you know, they have such amazing ideas, and I see them doing their own research and writing beautiful papers, all of that. It really is just the students where it's like, wow, you know, I'm making a difference in your lives, but also you're making a difference in my lives and the lives of many people in and outside of the university. And so it is this sort of like awesome, multifaceted relationship of getting to work with awesome students, while getting to do my research that I care so much about.
Amazing. Okay. Next question is, do you know anyone who is living their life to the fullest?
No, I don't think for much of the world, at least much of the US, that the current capitalistic social system allows for anybody to live their life to the fullest. You have to work. You have to work all the time for not enough pay. And you have to pay your bills in order to have a house, to have health care, to have like all of these basic like human rights. Um, and maybe some people find that they're living their life fullest through work. That's great for them. But many, many, many people I talk to and I read about, it feels like a system that's trapped us into you have to do this in order to be able to live like a decent life, and some people can't even do that. And so I don't think I know anyone who's living their life to their fullest because they're not able to within the current system, that are amazing people living amazing lives with awesome kids and places that
Mhm.
they're going and things that they're doing. But are they living it to the fullest? I don't think they're able to, and I don't think I'm able to either, until somehow this system is, I don't think dismantled is the right word, but altered in some way that allows us to do that.
Amazing. Love your answer. I'm sure a lot of people watching gonna will agree with you.
Yeah, I bet so.
Two questions left. Let's do
All
it.
right.
Ty, I'm gonna ask a question for you, a personal question. The name of your state that you come from is called Naomi. Is
Wyoming.
Wyoming, right?
Yep.
I'm so fascinated. I'm gonna tell you something now. Since I've been doing the show, most of my guests on the show they are from the US. Yeah, I think I visited most of the states in the US because through the Magic Box, amazing stories from amazing places, places that I never heard before, and I got educated about it. And I'm
Yeah.
gonna be very honest to you, I never heard about your state before. And when you said it, I'm so glad that because when I was looking at your profile, of course, I thought you're from Mississippi. But when you mentioned about your, the state where you come from, I was like, oh my God, that's something I'm gonna learn today because I never heard of it before.
Yeah.
And you are the first person from your state that will be on the show. So tell me a little bit more about your state. Tell me where it's based, where it's located. Tell me something about the state that stands out compared with other states. Educate me. I'm
Yeah.
here to learn because I love it when I learn something new, and you're gonna make my day today for sure.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Well, thanks for asking. If I had a dollar for every time someone said I was the first person they met from Wyoming, man, I would have a lot of dollars. And at first, I was like, oh, really? But we're the lowest populated state, like population wise, in the entire country. I think we're about like 600,000. It used to be about 500,000 people in the whole state. And so I always joked like, New York and the surrounding area, like New York City is like 11 million, I think, or something like that. And so we're talking about in that small area, there's many times the size of my entire state.
Wow.
And so I'm always grateful if I can like talk about it. Wyoming is, if you ever talk to people who have been there, is one of the most naturally beautiful places that you'll ever go to. It has Yellowstone National Park. Obviously, Montana also has some of Yellowstone National Park, but a lot of it's in Wyoming. It has the Grand Teton National Park, where there's Jackson, if you ever heard of Jackson or Jackson Hole. That's like a really pretty area and a really pretty national park as well. It has a ton of national monuments. So Devil's Tower is actually the first national monument ever, like sort of deemed a national monument in the entire country. It's this beautiful like rock structure. And so you'll have all these like mountains and canyons and rivers, forests. It is just open landscape with so few people that you can be like in the middle of no, and I don't say middle of nowhere in a bad way, like really in the middle of like it's just you and nature. And so it is a place where you can breathe fresh air. You can see many, like miles away. You can see gorgeous sunsets and gorgeous sunrises, and just be sort of like with yourself and whoever you want to be there and nature. So it's a really cool place to be a part of. It is a very agriculture-based state and energy-based state. And so there's lots of farms and ranches, lots of cattle. There used to be a lot more, but still there's some sheep farms. So that's like what Brokeback Mountain they were doing was like sheep herding.
I see.
Um, so a lot of agriculture, horses, wild horses, like all of that is there. Um, the crops are a lot of like wheat and hay crops, but people do sugar beets and barley and all sorts of things. But at one point, we were the top producers of wheat. I'm not sure if that's still the case. But we
Wow.
also have a lot of energy and natural resources, so oil, gas, coal, regardless of how people feel about that, Wyoming provides a lot of that. And so it's this state that there's a reason that we call it the Wild West because it truly is just a place with a lot going on and like things that people have never even heard of or dreamed of before.
Wow.
Um, it's right above Colorado and right below Montana, and
Okay.
right if you're looking at a map to the left of Nebraska. And so it's in the region that we call the Mountain West. And I always call it the Mountain West on purpose because it is Idaho, Utah, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, um, and those are really these like expansive mountain regions. It's not the Midwest where you might have more like large fields and corn and soybeans and those sorts of things, which is also great. But I'm like, no, there's a pretty big distinction of like the mountains. And so the Rocky Mountains are a huge part. I'm sure you've heard of those, of Wyoming, the rest of the Mountain West. Um, and yeah, it's just this really, really interesting place to be a part of. And like I said, most people say I'm the first person they've ever met from Wyoming, and that is something that I'm proud of now. But it took me a long time to sort of figure out, like, oh, not everybody grew up showing cattle and sheep and pigs in the county fair and being up in the mountains all the time and just random things like pig wrestling, like whatever it is. It's like there's all these like really interesting Wyoming things. And so yeah, it's a very unique place to grow up in.
Amazing. I'm so glad that you are part of you come from there and you're just the first person in the magic box. Amazing.
Oh,
Great.
thanks. And if anybody ever goes, I always say get away a little bit. It's not that Yellowstone and Jackson Hole aren't great, but get down to like the Bighorns and the Wind River Canyon. The Wind River Canyon is my favorite place in Wyoming. You drive through it and it is just breathtaking. And there's so many different like types of rock and trees, and it's just you you can't imagine what it looks like until you're there. And a river runs through it, and you can go whitewater rafting through the Wind River Canyon. And then on the other side is a dinosaur museum because actually dinosaurs roamed that whole area. And so I always think how cool it is to think that like the literal dinosaurs were just like all around these rock structures. And so I just love it there. And then if you go to Thermopolis, the town that has the dinosaur museum, it has what they call the world's largest mineral hot springs. And so you can go bathe in the hot springs and hang out in this small town. It's a really cool place to be at.
Wow, you're so proud of your place, your state. Amazing.
I try. And I even got to do research there this past January and go up and look at what community colleges in Wyoming were doing for rural working class students. And so I'm still very connected there with lots of folks and with lots of places. So it's something that I'll never let go of because it's always such a big part of me.
Amazing. Next question is, what makes you the happiest?
Man, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but like reading on a beach and like swimming in the ocean or the sea is truly what makes me the happiest. Yes, laughing with my friends, that's another one. Like it's huge. That's why I actually love like a lot of my close friends because we have the same sort of sense of nostalgia where we're all laughing about like old things that have happened or like things from our childhood. And so that laughing is just like the best. But if I wasn't around my friends, like literally being on the beach and I was in Sitges, like going back and forth between reading my book in the sun and like swimming in the waves, it's just the best. And I think I tell people I'm from a landlocked state. I never got to see the ocean until college. And I didn't even get to swim in salt water until like my first study abroad, like my junior year of college. And so it's something that I've been obsessed with since I was a kid. You can ask folks, I was very obsessed with the ocean and um, all the things that come with it, even imaginary things like mer people. But there's something about it that I find so enchanting and like overwhelming and interesting. And so if I could just be on the beach reading and then swimming in the waves and eating an ice cream cone like that, that's the best.
Interesting. We come from a very small city, and actually back in Brazil, my state is quite huge. Yeah, it's a very big state. However,
Yeah.
the population is quite small, and a lot of forests, a lot of landscape. So it's a different place. However, the first time, the closest sea for me growing up, it was still 2 hours by plane. The closest.
Oh, wow.
So the
Yeah.
first time I saw the sea in my life, I was 18 years old when I finished high school, and we went on the school a vacation, and it was the south of Brazil, and it was the very first time. I remember the very first time when I stepped in the sea, I was like, oh my God, I have pictures,
Yes.
I even brought like a bottle of water with water from the sea for my mom, and
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So for me, it's back on time for you to go to the sea was impossible for you. You need to be rich to go to the sea because it was quite
Exactly.
far.
Yep.
Nowadays, it's more accessible nowadays, but at the time, growing up in the 80s,
Yeah.
it wasn't. It was something that you could do, like often. So yeah, but
Yeah.
amazing, great.
No, I love it. And I still talk, that's literally why I talk about rural, poor, and working class folks, because
Yeah,
people like to say, oh, well, everything is like, connected now. You can do everything. And I'm like, yeah, not everybody has the money to do that. So like our
no,
vacations were up to like the mountains in a tent. They were
yeah,
not to like a 5-star resort in wherever you're going to. And so it really is something where when you're talking about being so physically isolated and away from
yeah,
everything, and then you don't have
absolutely,
the money to travel, yeah, there's a whole world out there that you haven't gotten to see yet. And so it is completely eye-opening and just magical when you get to go finally explore it.
totally. Ready for the last question?
Yes.
Let's do it. Last one. But before the last question, Ty, teaching, being a professor, of course, I'm sure a lot of your students, they are very grateful and they've learned a lot with you. However, I'm sure teaching as well, you can learn a lot with students, yeah? So
Yeah.
my question for you is, so far in your career, tell me something or a moment that you learned something that's through your students that you're never going to forget, something that's always going to have a special place in your heart.
That is a great question. I'm thinking back through, because I've been teaching for a while. So there's two things
Mm-hmm.
that I'm thinking of. I'm sure I'll think of something later and go, oh, that's also good. But there was a student in one of my classes. So before I came to Ole Miss, I was teaching, it's a long story, but with Colorado State University. And I remember a student writing that they said, this was in my evaluation, and they said, at the beginning of the semester, I told everyone that I felt like I just wanted to give Dr. McNamee, or, Dr. Tyre, whatever I was called at the time, a hug. But like by the end of the semester, like I just want to give him a bigger hug. And it wasn't that I didn't understand what teaching could do. Like I'd been sort of in it, and I'd had, my mom was an elementary teacher, but it's those times where you're like, oh, like you really, I learned from you how important it is to be like a kind, genuine, empathic person to somebody, because it can really change like the trajectory of their lives. And so I think it's so cool that I learned that from those students, that I can keep that in mind as I move forward. Um, the other thing that I learned from another student, so a lot of the times in classes, we might have a lot of like groupthink or like agreements as a group. And he was one of the first students, and I'm not saying that like you need to be devil's advocate for everything, but like he was one of the first students where I was like, well, I could see where this other group is coming from. Like, this is what they're thinking, like this is the viewpoints that they have, and here's why they might have them. And he was brave to do that. I mean, obviously there was everybody else in class did not have these viewpoints. And so I learned that there's a way to sort of respectfully bring those other ideas into the conversation and be able to like validate that in a way. And so I learned from him how to like bring that up in the conversation. And so both of those students, yeah, really made an impact on my life and taught me something. But I always say every semester I learn something from students. So there's a million things I could name here, but those are two that stick out for sure.
Amazing. Last question for you is, what is the most beautiful thing someone has ever done for you?
Oh my God.
Right in the spot, yes?
I know that is one where I'm like, oh man, I really need to think about it. I guess that I would go back to my brother. I came out to him freshman year of college, and he took about 24 hours of being like astounded and just kind of like feeling surreal about me being gay, to being like the best queer ally. It's like he's straight and he's queer ally. And that was beautiful because I worried for so long that like my macho straight brother would hate me and that my family would hate me and that friends would hate me and whatever it is, that to have somebody that you're best friends with, you've been close with since literally the womb, uh, uh, be so supportive of me, and not just supportive, but like treating me like, yeah, you're just my brother and you're gay. Like this is something we talk about openly and regularly. It's just like it's not that it doesn't matter, but it's like it doesn't make you feel othered or not included. And so that was like one of the most beautiful things that I could think of, like right off the top of my head.
Wow. When you say queer ally, it means like open-minded and understanding.
Yeah, and even more so like willing to stand up for the queer community
I
when
see.
people are being homophobic, transphobic, like queerphobic, whatever it is. We say like cis heteronormative, like whatever it is.
I
And
see.
so my brother, he accepts queer people, and I mean like gay and trans, like whatever sexual orientation or gender identity that you come with, but also he posts about things and he fundraises for things and gets involved. There was an incident at our university that we both went to where there was some conservative actions against like a queer student group on campus, and my brother was like helping raise money against that. Like he just does really good things, and so it's not that anyone is ever a perfect queer ally, but he really does feel like it feels like he's someone I can turn to be an advocate and to be someone who cares about it for sure.
Are you doing identical twins or not? Different?
Our This is funny, our tests were inconclusive. And so this like a rare amount of cases, like I think it's like 3% of cases that the tests are inconclusive. So we look a lot alike and we sound a lot alike, but he's a couple inches taller than me, has a little bit longer of a face. So everyone's always like split 50-50 on if they think we're identical or fraternal, but who knows? You have not been able to get that tested.
And saying that, what's the like personality way? What's the biggest difference between both of you and the biggest similarity?
Biggest similarity is our like sense of humor. We quote the most like obscure lines of movies from the 90s and 2000s. And because we grew up together and that's sort of imprinted in our brain the same way, we will say it and be like, no one else in the world would understand that obscure quote, and we laugh about it. And so that is something that is a big similarity. The biggest difference is like I lift weights and like I liked playing basketball, but like Chase was like huge athlete, like athlete
Wow.
of the year 4 times in a row in high school, like all state, which is like the best athletes in the state in all three sports that we played. He loves watching football and basketball, and he's like a big sports guy. And so, like, he and my mom talk about Sunday and Monday night football. Like, they love it. And I'm like, I truly do not care about that for the most part. So, that's a big difference in our personalities. But everything else is pretty similar.
Amazing. Okay, so the end yet. Let's play now the word association game. Okay, I'm going to give away some words. Just tell one word that comes to your mind. Keep thinking.
Okay.
Let's start with money.
Money,
Yeah.
evil.
Fear.
Am I just saying one word?
Just one word. Yeah.
Okay. Fear. Necessary?
Family.
Amazing.
Life.
Complicated.
Love.
Multifaceted?
I like this word. Wow. Religion.
Oh man, I have such a long answer about this. Complex, I guess.
Okay. Sex.
Good.
I like your face. Good.
I could go into a whole answer about that too.
Politics.
Divisive.
Okay. Friendship.
Awesome.
Desire.
Dangerous.
I totally agree. One word for regret.
Unnecessary?
Okay. Success.
I'm going to say two words, but it's like one thing together. It's like first step.
Okay. Happiness.
Good.
One word for Mississippi State.
I would also, I know I'm reusing a word, but complicated.
Okay. Let's see if I'm gonna say right. Wyoming, the name of your.
Wyoming. Yep.
Say again.
Wyoming.
Wyoming. Okay.
Wyoming.
Why? Why? I said the right.
It's hard.
Okay. Wyoming.
Yes, perfect. Nice.
Amazing. So one word for Wyoming.
Home?
Okay. USA, one word.
Ooh. The USA. I'm gonna say working on it. Sorry, my dog is jumping up. Working on it.
Can I see your dog?
Yeah, come here, Lucky. Come here. Oh, now he doesn't want to jump on me. Come here,
Okay.
Bubba. Come on. He's a half beagle, half pit bull, and he's
wow.
got a face that will let him get away with anything.
And the last one now, professor, one word.
Life changer.
Amazing. Let's pretend now I'm going to meet your brother for a coffee, and I'm going to ask him, define Ty in one positive word and one negative word only, what he would say.
I think he would say kind as the positive word, or nice. I think the negative word could be like overthinker.
Interesting. If I would ask the same question to your lovely mom, would be the same answer?
Yeah, I think she would say kind, and then instead of overthinker, she would say worrier.
See, always being Ty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
I welcome to the club. I've been like most. I understand your point. It's something about it that it takes your energy, like But there's different ways for you to kind of get away of it. And the way I find sometimes I go like, you know what? When I realize that I'm spending too much energy in certain topic that I'm overthinking, I just go like, okay, William, you are there again. Let's try to change. I make a joke with myself, and sometimes it works because tracked. But I understand it can drain you. It can drain you so hard that you go like, my God, how is possible? Anyway.
I know. Yeah, and my therapist gave me a really good way of dealing with that at some point because I would get so bogged down in like the dark thoughts that she would say, how can you, it's not like toxic positivity, but it's like, how do you reframe this to find like a sliver of light? Like if something bad's happening, like what's a good thing that's going to come out of this, or what's a good way of looking at it? And that weirdly, like I've always seen moods as colors, and that's like a little sliver of like white or yellow, like in my mind. And so that's very helpful to me.
Amazing. Let's play now, Ty, in the magic box, and you can ask me a question. But before you ask me the question, in the beginning of the interview, you mentioned about, a lovely professor that kind of guides you, or, you know what I mean, suggests you to go into your career right now. Let's see that it's a her, it's a she, it's a lady. Let's see that she's watched this interview right now, and you have a moment, an opportunity to send her a message. What would you say?
What's funny is she was at the wedding that I was at. One of the people getting married is like a friend, mentor of mine who also works as a professor at UConn. So I actually said a lot of this to her like 3 weeks ago. I say, thank you so much. I would say you're the first person to ever push me towards a doctorate. I knew that maybe a doctorate was in my future, but you are the person who was like, why not? Why don't you just do it? And thank you for guiding me. and helping me understand like the black box of universities and academia, because it is very confusing with a lot of unwritten rules and processes and procedures. And truly, I thank the universe that I came up to you after class and talked to you, because it changed the entire trajectory of my life, which is wild to think about. And actually, my brother came to get his doctorate a year after I started at Columbia with me. And so you changed the trajectory of my brother's life too. And so we can't thank you enough for everything that you've done for me and my entire family.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, Ty, you can ask me a question now.
Yes. So my question that I thought of, it's not would you go back in time and live this moment again, but if you could go back in time to any, I'm sorry, my dog is squeaking his toy too. Luke, hey, hush, hush, hush. If you could go back in time to any positive moment in your life, childhood, yesterday, like it doesn't matter, and see yourself living that moment, where would you go back to and why?
You know what? A lot of memories are coming to my mind right now when you start, formulating the question, and I could tell you so many stories about my childhood memories because, I've been very fortunate, to grow up in the 80s, and be able to play with my friends and, do things that nowadays it's not even impossible, but people, they don't do that anymore. It's a different world right now. But you
Yeah.
know what, Ty? I'm gonna go back to my very first day at school. Before,
Oh,
yeah, before I start going to school, I have two cousins. They are older than me, 3 years, and I remember, because she went to school before than me, first than me. So I remember I was crying because I want to go to school so badly. There was something about school that I wanted to go.
yeah.
However, I think 1 year before I went to school, my grandmother, she asked the teacher of my cousin if I could attend at least the first day at school just for me to be happy because I was crying at home. So I don't remember clearly, but there was this scene in my mind, like my cousin sitting and I sit by her side, and I was like, having the best. 1 year after, of course, was my first day at school, and I remember clearly, like walking with my colleague students, like holding hands, going to the classroom, and also I remember my very first teacher. It was a moment that brought me so much happiness because I wanted so badly to go to school, and so that's I remember my uniform. I remember like shorts, like blue shorts and white.
Oh,
I remember all of that because for me it was like a dream come true at the time. I wanted so badly to go to school, and I have memories, and I have a lot of memories like for me during Christmas time, like doing some acting as well, like growing up. I had so many pictures of me, at school, and I loved it. I think school for me, talking to you, it helps me to go back to my childhood as well because it's great. It was great for me. I just loved it being at school. I just loved the. I think being a gay queer guy, queer boy, you like to be with our own people, to be learning. There's
yeah.
something about us that we connect with. So yeah, I would
Yeah.
say my very first day at school. It's when I think about it, it makes me smile because it was a very special day.
Oh yeah, and those memories like imprint so much in your brain. You're soaking everything up at that time. And it is like it's like you physically can feel, I don't know, like the pencils, sharpener, like
They
the sharpened
smelled. They
pencils.
smelled
Yeah, like everything is just so like imprinted there. So I love that. Thank you so much for answering that question. I think that's a great answer.
amazing. Ty, did you enjoy the interview?
Oh yes, this was amazing. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thanks so much for being so kind, and I'm so glad that you shared your story. It's so very inspiring to see someone come from a very small town, a small place, and now you are, in a different place of your life, and it's very inspiring because sometimes people they think, that it's just the way it should be because you are part of that world, which is not wrong with that. But however, seeing someone talking so open about it, and you can see that there is always somewhere to go and different ways of pursue your life and
Yeah,
go after your dreams because it's there, as you said, there is a big world right there to be explored. So if you have the
exactly.
if you have the the tendency, the personality to do it, why not? Go for it. And people, I'm sure people watch this interview, they appreciate as well, because you never know where this interview can go, and people, they might, feel inspired as well. So thanks so much for being so open about it.
Thank you. And it's good to meet another small town person. You're just as inspiring.
Totally.
And I'm glad that you're doing this show. I looked at some of the videos. It's really cool. So thank you again for the invitation.
Thank you so much. Before we go, if you can share a positive message or anything that you live by.
Yeah. So I remember you like asking for like a quote, and I was like, it's not so much as a quote, but it's something that I've said to other people. If you're ever like overwhelmed by work and family and school, whatever it is, I like to go walking in like the trees on a trail, like just with my dog, go to the beach, like whatever it is, where you can be sort of alone. And I always say it's when you remember that we're just like little organisms flying around on a rock in space. And so, yes, it feels like work and all of these things are the most important to you at the moment, but really, you're just an organism like flying around space. So let some of that stress and like anxiety go, and just remember that like we're part of a huge universe, and and all these things are so small compared to that. So that's my piece of advice, or something that I would tell people with, is just remember, you're part of this huge infinite universe.
Amazing. Very good. Thanks so much, Ty. It was a pleasure connect with you, and you keep in touch. Okay, it was a pleasure.
I will. All right, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Have a great day and keep in touch.
You're welcome. All right, we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye. So, did you like the show? Don't forget to give a like, to share it, and also don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And if you'd like to be part of the show as well, first, subscribe to our channel, and after that, just go to our website, www.williamandthemagicbox.com, and send us a request saying why would you like to be part of the show. And I see you there. Bye bye, see you next time.